You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. Did you know that the world's best trap makers call Mississippi home? We're going to meet them today. Jack Robertson, T.J. Arnott on the show.
Mississippi Outdoors is sponsored by Entergy Mississippi. Entergy is building a stronger and cleaner grid to power a brighter future and protect our great outdoors for generations to come.
We've got Jack Robertson and T.J. Arnott here with us today from Wildlife Dominion. Boys, thanks for being on the show.
Glad to be here.
Now, you and I are pretty close to the same age. It's okay if I say boys, right? We're still
That's
boys.
right, yeah.
We were talking about the age thing earlier.
Yeah, he just presents much older.
That's right. It's a level of maturity.
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting that gray, too. That's
Platinum.
Platinum, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
All it is experience and intelligence.
It's just a silver lining coming up.
Tip says he's going to steal it.
That's right.
All right, so I'm going to start you off with the easiest and broadest question anybody has ever asked you, almost as if like you're wearing that shirt in the airport and a stranger says, hey, Wildlife Dominion, what is that? How do you answer that question?
Well, it just depends on how long we've got. But the short story is we were my family was in the hunting business. And so we had a hunting lodge up around Crawford. 2015, I'm a Mississippi State graduate, and I have a partner, Robbie Taylor. He and I both came through the forestry and the wildlife ecology program. And so we were doing some work for another company, working on camera systems for a different reason. And I said, we can use this in the wildlife industry, because typically the wildlife industry doesn't get the technology everybody else does for about 10 years. And so, we decided, hey, we're going to start trapping pigs. There's a need. This is what we're going to do. I had summers free, being in the hunting business. Once you get everything burned, sprayed, and planted, you kind of just go fishing. So I figured it was going to be a little just side deal. And so Robbie and I started that. And then, like I said, late 2015, we built we put some money together. We bought some supplies. We built our first camera and went to Mississippi State. They were doing a trapping project over in the Delta at the time. That was under Bronson and Clay, I think, was the grad student on it.
Yeah, TJ that was the first ever pig project at Mississippi State University.
That's right.
Is that right?
And TJ was a student and was working on it.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to say he doesn't have that gray yet, so he's
not yet.
That makes sense.
It's coming, yeah. Like I said, it's coming. It's either going to turn loose or turn white. But anyway, so we started working with them, and we gave them a camera to try this and see how you like it. So that was probably November, December of 15, and January when we went back to work in 16, they called and said, hey, we need some more of these. And so I told Robbie, I said, looks like we're in the camera business. So we scrounged together some more money, and like I said, we built some more, and that started working, and it was going well. And like I said, working with them, and then, of course, Wildlife Services, the USDA was doing some trapping. They're watching what they're doing. Hey, we need some of those. And so it just kind of started snowballing. And we were building it in a little she shed at my farm. And
it was a repurposed quail barn, if you really want to.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice about it. But, yeah, so we took a weekend and moved the quail. I had 2 quail houses there. So we moved the quail out of one, sprayed it with Clorox, pressure washed it, and, moved tables in. Because at that time, we were working out of like a 16-foot trailer. I mean, we had nothing.
And you're building cameras.
Yeah. So we're building camera systems. And at that time, they were all cellular. And they hooked to the gates of a trap. Mostly we're talking about pig traps. And then, like I said, sends you an alert. You're watching it from your phone. You can, hit the button, drop it, catch what you need. The key is, knowing what's out there and going back to the whole sounder, trapping. That is the most effective trapping. Or at the same time of if you've got 18 pigs and you've got 16 in there, do you want to go ahead and catch those 16 and go out at night and shoot the other 2? Or, so. But
so to
gives you the information.
Yeah, so to add to what Jack was saying, up until that point, the only camera systems that existed for animal capture were just text picture based, basically like a cellular trail camera.
Okay.
So they would send you pictures one at a time to your phone, and then you would have to either call or text message a separate mechanism that would then trigger the gate. So the trapping efforts were still very rudimentary at that point in time.
Okay.
So there was a huge demand for real-time live video.
What's interesting to think of too, like it's almost like you think about in the fishing world, the sonar, the live sonar. It's almost like that's running parallel, where we went from the old depth finder stuff.
That had a blip on the screen.
Till now, I'm watching the fish chase my bait live, that sort of thing.
And there was a huge demand because, I was a technician on that first research project, and we were having mountains of issues because we were trying to capture pigs to put GPS collars on them to study their movements in the Mississippi Delta. And we were having roadblock after roadblock after roadblock with just trying to capture the correct animals because we were working with this old, outdated technology.
This is while you were a student.
Yeah, so this is when I was getting my undergrad at Mississippi State. So I previously worked at the deer research facility, and then a pig project started up, and I said, hey, that sounds like the future. So I hopped on the pig project, and he gave me the first camera to effectively tear up and tell him what was wrong.
And all of this is within the last 10 years, basically, we're talking about?
Yeah,
so
10
like
years
I said,
ago.
15, 16, right there at the end of 15 and beginning of 16 is when it all started.
That's really cool.
And, everybody told us, hey, live video is not the way, it's too expensive. It's too hard to do. And, at that time, it wasn't the easiest to do. Luckily, like I said, my partner, Robbie, he's got a IT background. And so, he helped us overcome the problems with that.
Yeah, because if you put something in the field that has to run off of a battery and stay connected to the cellular network and sustain a up to the second live video.
Yeah, right.
As well as be able to trigger something. You're talking about something that nobody had ever even thought about or they thought was impossible 10 years ago.
Well, and let's be honest, like there was a time where it kind of was impossible in terms of what even cellular networks could handle. But then 5G came along, and I guess So what is that connection? Is it a cellular type connection?
So most of what we do is cellular. We're the only people at the time. We do offer satellite. So you get in a situation where there's no service, and that's deep in a national forest or somewhere like Cades Cove. We do a lot of work in the mountains out west.
Yeah, most of our camera systems in Australia are the satellite camera system.
And then overseas.
Once you get inside the interior mountain range in Australia, there's no cell towers.
Those people still run CBs. That's how they communicate, shortwave and CBs. So
it's satellite or nothing.
Yes,
nothing.
Absolutely.
That's it. It's their only option. And so, that's one thing we've tried to stay on the front end of that. And we've done a good job, like I said, which is why, our goal was to trap pigs in Mississippi. And when we started, we said, man, 4 years from now, everybody will have a camera that needs one and we'll be done. And so here we are 10 years later, we're trapping actively right now systems in probably 35 states and 8 countries.
Wow.
So, it's just kind of, we think we get to the end and then all of a sudden, hey, there's another deal that pops up or another round of, farm bill or there's, hey, a new problem. And so it just keeps growing and our business has done well, and during COVID, we went into COVID, we had 2 full-time and 2 part-time guys that were working with us. And then, so we, of course, the hunting industry shut down. Everybody was working from home and so we were able to keep rolling. And when we came out of COVID, I think we had 13 employees. And so we said, hey, we need a bigger quail barn. So
we had people stuck in every corner of that quail barn.
It was a little ridiculous. So, it's continued to grow and we've got a real good team now. We stayed in Crawford, but like I said, we actually bought a school and moved our location there. And so, now, but we've got everybody in-house from the developers to the app writers to, the technical support. So, it's all with us right there. And so it makes it really nice. Whereas, a lot of the competitors, they don't do that. They're selling a camera that they bought, from, let's say, China or wherever. They can tell you some, but they can't tell you anything. Well, if you call HogEye or Wildlife Dominion with a problem, we've got the guy that designed the computer chip it's running on and the guy that wrote the daggone program that's supposed to be talking
in-house,
with the code
sitting
there. So,
that's really cool.
And we looked at it. And like I said, that's when we went to, now we're a 4-year warranty. We're looking at extending it now just because we can maintain our stuff and it works.
I'll tell you this morning, the head of our tech support department, I'm not kidding, Jeff, this morning told me that he got a call yesterday, the 12th ever camera that we built. Somebody called because it had a little issue and he fixed it from the office and it's still working out there in the field.
What fixed it remotely or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's all of ours. So like I said, our team does a real good job of, they write the programs and they do the stuff so that most of the time, unless you break it or you let it go underwater or cows trample it, shoot it with a rifle, whatever happens. But if it's a technical issue, about 90% of that stuff they can fix remote. All you got to do is call them.
In 10 years, it's grown to what it is now. And am I right? I mean, is this, again, a novice statement of am I right? It's pretty much built on wild hog and that need for people out there initially.
That's right. And that's still probably 70% of what we do is feral hogs. That's what we're known for. And that was the nuisance animal that was easy to target and that had a monetary value as far as the destruction. And so people were willing to spend the money. And that's, like I said, we've taken that and pretty much we roll everything right back into the next project. Because, I mean, like I said, we're local and we want to stay local. And so but yes, wild hogs by far is what we do.
Well, and so first of all, thanks for the hat. HE stands for HogEye. I like your hat too.
Oh, yeah.
So the name, was that right away? Did you come up with the name or where'd that come from?
Yeah, the HogEye name, we sat around one night around the grill and just said, okay, we've got to have a name. And neither Robbie nor I are very creative when it comes to that. And so we went through a bunch of names and a lot of them we were like, man, we can't do that. And so, yes, HogEye, it showed up probably by January, that first year.
Okay.
Like I said, Wildlife Dominion was kind of that's the parent company, and HogEye is the brand of it. And now we do make camera systems for other companies some of them are branded, some of them want to use the HogEye because you can look around and, anybody will tell you, hey, the HogEye we're the name when it comes to that.
TJ, for you, okay, you're a student, and so your paths cross because of some of the programs you're involved in there at Mississippi State. Was it right away like you knew, okay, light bulb goes off, I'm going to work for those guys? What was that like? You laugh because there must be a story.
Yeah, there is.
Several.
So the very first cameras that first camera that was ever made, it didn't say HogEye anywhere on it. I mean, it might have said Plano on the back of it.
I think it
Pelican.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, it was when he says pieced together. I mean, every part and every single camera was handmade to the point where they were hand making the wiring harnesses. Every single part and piece in there was handmade from raw material. There was nothing prefab or pre-manufactured.
Okay.
So with that came every one of them was wired a little bit differently, and they were trying to figure out how to streamline this process. So I couldn't tell you how many times in the Mississippi Delta it would be 98 degrees in the middle of July, and this camera wasn't working, and I was sitting there on speakerphone with Jack. And, there was more than a few times where he mentioned that, hey, you need to hurry up and finish school because I'm tired of training you. You need to just come work for me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, any R&D, we were very far along whenever we started, but we were not anywhere near a finished product. And so, like I said, we learned a lot. The first year, there was a lot of, okay, we got to do this better. Or, we were using lamp cord,
Okay.
to do some kind of wiring. Well, guess what? It's not really marked. Yeah, there's a ridge on one side, but after it's been in the field for 6 months, or pigs have chewed on it, whatever, it doesn't look the same.
Yeah, when he says lamp cord, he means like the cord that comes out of the back of that lamp up there that plugs into the wall.
Yeah.
You can buy a spool of 1,000 feet of it, and that's what the cameras are.
That's right. So, I mean, like I said, we learned a lot. And, now we use engineered wiring harnesses, and they're all made UL certified and all that other stuff. But yeah, when he first started, when we left lamp cord, we were pulling individual wires through heat shrink with a heat gun. And if it's 50 foot long for 50 feet, you put a heat gun to it. And then we realized that didn't scale.
No. As you guys have talked, even before we began recording, this title of problem solving just has continued to pop up in my head. It's like, that's the best way to describe, I think, what has been maybe the whole journey of where you started to where you are now with HogEye and with Wildlife Dominion. You're kind of on a constant problem solving mission. It seems like, and that's what's driven you towards whatever path you go on.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're in the business of solving wildlife issues, nuisance or, invasive in the term of pigs, but sometimes they're not invasive. They're just a native animal that, we've gotten out of balance. Humans are notorious we think we know better than Mother Nature. And so that's pretty much yes. I mean, like I said, we've built this business on the back of the feral swine or wild pigs, whatever you want to call them. But, the real deal is, like I said, we trap. If you have a problem with it, let us know. We may have a solution. And that's the benefit of, TJ and I, we travel a lot. So, like I said, he was in Australia a couple weeks ago. So it's not that we know everything, but when you look at situations around the world and how people are doing it, you kind of become a library of knowledge of, hey, this is how we did this situation dealing with this animal in wherever, in North Dakota or Germany. So now we know how to look at it. You show up in Puerto Rico and they say, hey, we need to do this. Well, this is not that much different than what we did in South Carolina.
The opportunities or the ideas for new and creative ways to trap things are endless, because it's not that we're sitting in a room saying, hey, what's the next step? People, our customers and people that have heard about us or worked with us or know us, they call us constantly.
Okay.
Say, hey, I have this problem. I need a better way to do this. And just about everything that we make or sell or service or promote is things where enough people asked us to do it to where we were finally like, hey,
there's a market there.
Yeah,
that's right.
So Germany, what kind of nuisance animals do they have in Germany?
Pigs. Pigs are a big problem.
Yeah. So, but wild hogs are actually native to that part of the world.
Okay.
So most of our pigs that exist in the United States can trace their roots back to Europe somewhere. Now, whether that be the first ones that came over in the 1500s or whether that be the ones that people brought over 50 or 100 years ago for the, the high fence hunting market, most of them can trace their roots back to Europe. So, even though that's a native species in that part of the world, they still cause a lot of problems.
What's the oddest or most unique thing you've ever caught in a trap?
That's a dangerous question.
I know.
Dangerous question.
It has to be.
Well, I mean, we've, and it's all relative. So,
Okay.
If you've got, we went to Australia to catch chickens in the middle of nowhere just to prove the satellite concept and that it would work. Yeah. So, but those people had a problem with feral chickens. And so to them, that was the most important. To us, we were like, we're really going to travel halfway around the world to catch a chicken? Yes,
just
we are.
about everything in Australia is either non-native or invasive.
That's
most, and even some of their native species are very invasive and out of control.
Okay.
So, but the pig market is huge in Australia because most of their pig populations are extremely remote and therefore very difficult to control.
When you started this in Mississippi, what was that first couple of phone calls you got where it began to branch out and you go, now this is going on, we're going to have to do some traveling? When did that actually start? Was it immediately like going to Alabama, neighboring states?
Yeah. So that's kind of how we grew it organically, I guess would be a good. And so spring of 2016, we went to a feral swine national meeting in South Carolina. And that's kind of where we're fixed to tell the world we're here. Of course, everybody was there hey, live video is not going to work. TJ was, of course, there with Mississippi State. Mississippi State was, I think, a co-host of that. And they were like, don't downplay it, because we already were seeing the numbers of the increased catches from using the picture base, which was what everybody was using at the time, to use the live video. I mean, you were talking about, and I don't remember the numbers, but the average catch went from 11 to 16, something like that.
It was even more drastic than that. And I can't remember the numbers, but I can remember we were trapping with basically what people call root sticks or tripwires, which is you don't know what's in the trap. You're setting like an old-fashioned trap to trip off of pigs running into a stick or something like that. And then we were using the text picture-based camera systems where, we were lucky to catch 25% of the group of pigs. And basically, a lot of people know a lot about trapping. If you've got a group of 10 and you catch 2 of them, 8 of them have now seen those other 2 pigs get caught.
Okay.
And they get exponentially more difficult to catch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they learn quick.
Very fast.
That's, the whole sounder removal which is what you hear MDWFP preach, everybody, that's it. You have to do the whole sounder removal or as much as you can.
Yeah.
Because everything that you miss and leave there just got real difficult.
Yeah, pigs react to negative stimulus faster than almost any other animal. Now, that's anecdotally. I'm not saying that's research-based. There is research out there that says something similar. But when you give negative stimulus to a pig, they react immediately, and they remember that for a long time. So that's where
hence the problem.
Hence the problem.
So I'm also trying to imagine maybe that, again, I kind of keep going back to the beginnings. I'm fascinated with it, but there had to be that aha moment the first time that remotely you watch a trap drop and you're like, okay, we're on to something here. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. The first time we dropped, successfully from, 100 miles away.
Okay.
Yeah, we're there. I mean, we caught, and I think we probably caught 2 or 3 pigs. We didn't try to catch the whole sounder. We were like, let's just see if it's going to work.
And it did.
And most of our customers the same way. The first time, and we tell them, hey, you need to catch the whole sounder. But we know you're going to be trigger happy. So when
it never fails.
So it never fails. That first pig goes in there. I mean, some people throw almost like watch parties. I'm like, this is crazy. But, it
is addictive.
Yeah. We've done it for, like I said, 10 years now. And we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of animals. And,
hey, let me just say, goals, Chip. I want to go to a pig trap watch party just once in my life. Just once. If y'all are watching, you can invite me. I'll show up. All right. I interrupted.
Oh, no. You're more than welcome. Matter of fact, we can talk to some customers and get access to it, and we can catch, several in a night.
But even after you had successful trials and traps, you had people like at the event in South Carolina doubting it?
Yeah, it's the money.
Especially in the early days.
Okay.
Yeah.
The money, and that's the value of a pig or how much damage that pig is costing. That number is all over the place.
Okay.
But, you're looking at people that were selling, camera systems for $1,500. And when we jumped out there, hey, we're $2,500 just for the camera. And they're going, there's no way. Yeah. Well, and then as time moved on, and like I said, a lot of it was the work we did with Mississippi State. They showed some pretty drastic results pretty quick. And then, of course, Chris Godwin, that just, she was our state director here that just retired. Some of her guys that were over in the Delta were working with T.J. on the project, and they were like, hey, we've got to have some of these. Well, all of a sudden now you're in the federal system, and their catch rate starts up. When then, and so it starts growing. And, MDAC, Department of Ag and Commerce, like I said, they're looking at it, and they want to do this program, and what's the best out there. And, of course, we're the best. I mean, that's the reason we're sitting here. But anyway, we're the best at what we do, and we're in Mississippi. So it's just kind of, but we treat our customers, right. That's what I tell our guys. Hey, we're here for customer service. People can catch a pig with anything. I mean, really, they're all traps, and they'll all catch. Yeah. Some are better than others. All of them have their use, but, listen to what your customer's telling you. All of our people, if there's something there, there's not a message board or hey, you got to be quiet. No, if there's a problem, everybody in our company, if I got to call a meeting, we all go to this conference room. Where's this problem at, and who's, how do we fix it? Yeah. And how do we fix it quickly?
That's really fascinating. Okay. And so it's private landowners,
yes,
farmers, and agencies. You mentioned it, like MDWFP,
USDA Wildlife Services,
Ag and Commerce.
Yep.
So the range of customers, it's pretty broad.
It's real broad.
It's all of the above.
Yes.
It really is all of the above.
And it's gotten now, which is where we want to be, is we want to be a solution-based company. And so, whether it's, hey, we need to get geese out of a park in Massachusetts, or whether we need to catch ducks, or, there's a coyote running around in a neighborhood, we've got to get him out of there. Like I said, that's where we always wanted to be, is, if you've got a problem, call us, and if we can help, we will. Okay. Keeping birds off of a roost. We've designed a cannon system that runs off a camera. So now you can remotely operate your bird cannons to scare birds off. So, it's one of those, we have a technology platform that can do just about anything. And we have the people in-house that can design just about anything. So if you bring us a problem that we can fix with electronic pulse or trigger, we're pretty much, if there's a market there, we're going to do it. Or, if you say, I want it anyway, and you've got enough money, okay, we'll build a single one off. But, that's just kind of, that's what's gotten us where we are.
It's like a much more sophisticated version of that viral video I saw where the guy was tired of the squirrel eating all his bird seed, and he rigged up that 2x4 on the catapult. And as soon as the squirrel walked out, it threw the squirrel up in the tree. So you mentioned, I'm just going to machine gun it here. So you mentioned a goose. How do you catch a goose or geese with a trap?
You bait them in, put a top on the trap, and here we
I
go.
mean, so you literally use the exact same trap that you use for pigs. So there's a bunch of different styles of hog traps, but like the most popular or most widely known or long-standing is a panel trap, a corral style trap.
Okay.
With fixed panels, it's got a door that goes straight up and down.
Okay.
So if you put a net over the top of that to where the geese can't fly out, a goose will light and walk in somewhere.
And that'd be live camera based as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now we have multiple traps in the hands of agencies all across the country that are catching ducks and geese with them now. So the duck traps are cool because they're swim-in traps. So you basically put a trap in the water, and then the ducks will light and swim in the trap.
Yeah.
Most geese traps are dry land.
Yeah.
Well, from a business perspective, y'all are here, and I'm not even in the picture. But golf courses, I'm not giving away a secret, but it seems to me that
they're a good business.
I would imagine they are with the geese.
I got an answer to the your most interesting thing we've ever caught in a trap. We've got that guy using the panel traps to catch carp in the Mississippi River in the Midwest.
Really?
Yeah.
That one slipped my mind. Yeah.
That just came back to mind. He's using
the invasive carp.
Yeah, he's doing invasive carp as well as like the more common grass carp.
Grass carp?
You got a big panel trap, and he puts it in 1 to 2 feet of water and baits the carp into the trap, and you can see him with the camera, and he drops the gates remotely.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's right.
You said something earlier today about pigeons.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
You've been around big cities. Pigeons get to be a problem. With the avian influenza, all the bird flu and stuff, pigeons can be a carrier. Any bird can be a carrier of that. And so, and then you get these, heavy pigeon populations, and then you've got the droppings, and you've got all kind of other disease and problems. And so, pigeons is one of those. And then, on the flip side of it, you go out into the Dakotas with the big fields and stuff where, the pigeons will come in, and there's nothing to catch 400 or 500 pigeons a day. And so it's just one of those. They came to us and said, hey, we need to do this, and we need to do it better, because that's what it's all about is, we can only hire so many people to trap. No matter which agency or whether you're a private landowner, trapping is expensive. It's very labor intensive. And so any technology that we can add to that to take a guy from running 5 pig traps, and if you give him the technology, he can run 10 or 12, and so you can do more than, and people say, well, he can't cover 10 traps. Sure he can, because he doesn't have to drop all 10. He controls with the camera system. So, hey, if I'm working a 3-county area, I can stay on this one county. I can catch 5 loads of pigs in that one county, and then I'll just keep the other ones baited, and I'll get to them tomorrow, the next day, or whatever. That's the technology. It gives you control of your time. Because if not, he has to get in the truck first thing in the morning and make a 200, 300-mile loop just to check his traps.
Well, but the time part of it too. Now, again, I could also see here I am on the user end of it, and I'm supposed to be working, and my wife's giving me a honey-do list, but it'd be hard to pull it would almost be addicting, I think, watching those videos, even around the clock. I can imagine waking up in the middle of the night and excited to pull it up and see what's going on. I'm sure you hear those stories from customers.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't last long, but
it's a cycle. Whenever you get it, you're super excited, and it's the best thing in the world. And it is the best thing in the world for nuisance species management. But it does turn into work. I can tell you from experience, it turns into work.
Sure. Yeah.
We had a situation, a gentleman in Texas, and typically we can see how much data people are using, because the data, everything comes through us. Okay. So it's a one-stop shop. And so we just noticed this guy's data use was really high compared to everybody else's. And so I called him, said, hey, just trying to figure out why your data is. And he was like, I had a flat screen TV put in my house, hooked to a computer. It ran his hog trap 24 hours a day. 24. So he was watching sports on one side and hog trap on the other. And I said, we really need to kind of limit this a little. Yes, it's unlimited viewing, but most people don't let it stream 24/7. Right. And his conversation with me was, I bought it. I'm going to stream it. If you need to charge something different on the data, that's your problem. Go ahead. I don't care.
It's better than a ball game.
Yeah, I was like, I said, do you really just sit there and watch it? And he was on speakerphone, and his wife said, all night. And I went, yes, sir, we're good. I mean, so, and that's another, like I said, because we can control, we are the data company as well.
Yeah.
And so, we're the only one that says, hey, watch it all you want. We don't care because we've got the tools and like I said, we've got the expertise to limit how much data you're using, not as far as we don't slow you down or anything like that. The technology and, I'm talking deep now, codes that are streaming video. I mean, we're very good at that.
Compression rates on videos and, most or all other, camera companies will throttle your data or slow you down or charge you an overage. We're pretty much the only person that doesn't do that because we have the people in-house that can control how much data is burned by compressing the videos and changing different things on the back end to where it just burns less data.
People in-house, all those employees that are right there, where did the employee base come from? I mean, is it local people? Are they from all over?
No, they're local.
Most of them are from Mississippi.
Is that right?
Yeah. Jack and I are kind of the oddballs. I grew up south in New Orleans, and Jack grew up in Alabama. But just about everybody else is from Mississippi.
And that's one of those, like I said, the team's really good. So we can take somebody that's, they don't even have to have a college degree and, train them to do something. And when we hire somebody for a job, your training starts immediately. But as you progress and you learn more about how everything works, we will steadily move you up and bring another person in. And so, it's one of those things everybody says, well, you're going to have somebody with a computer science degree. No, I want the kid that tinkered and tore his electronic parts, his radio car or built his own radio car, but he didn't want to go to college. I'm not afraid, we're not afraid to put that person on.
You're also talking about your business partner.
Yeah.
So the company's owned by Jack and his brother-in-law. They're the two, partners in the company. Robbie's got a forestry degree.
Okay. Yeah.
But he was the guy that fixed everybody's computers going through college. And
right.
He can take that laptop part sitting on that table and put it back together and tell you how it works.
Yeah.
That's right.
I can see it. It's like had a buddy in college who was, on our football team. He was an offensive lineman on our football team, but he on the side is like a hobby mechanic. He might be the best I've ever been around. If I had a sure enough issue, I'd call him right now.
Absolutely.
Hey, Joe, I've got this going on. He could fix it probably over the phone, just one of those guys.
Well, and that's what, like I said, everybody works together. We've got, like I said, our team, although they're young, we've got, I call them kids, but they're, young people that started with us maybe straight out of high school that have been with us 5, 6, 7 years, and they're like, well, I'm not going anywhere. Same thing. We treat them I think we treat our people as good or better than anybody else, and we try to be fair. And hey, if you come up with an opportunity, an idea, by golly, we'll put you in charge of it and let's go. If it makes money, then hey, we're going to all share it. If it doesn't, then we'll look at each other and go, well, that didn't work. What's next? There's been a lot of that, but
we're far from perfect. And Jack may tell you that we're perfect, but we're far from perfect.
Well, I was going to say he's got to be careful though about calling everybody kids. No wonder they think he's older than he is, right?
He had much less grade 10 years ago.
That's okay though. And y'all travel all over the world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Based on people reaching out to you, wanting you to come look at their problem.
That's it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. How do we fix this?
Mm-hmm.
In the United States, we're really good at that. When it comes to wildlife, our agencies, no matter what people think about them, we deal with them all over the world. We've got the best people here. Now, sometimes we've got red tape or whatever, and it's hard to get something done. But working with those groups, you find the guys that want to be better. And that's the one thing, you can take and build the perfect pig trap and hand it to 3 different trappers. And in 6 weeks, they're going to call you back and tell you what's wrong with it and what you need to do different. And it's going to be totally different idea from each one of them because those guys, just the nature of that person is we want to make something better, something different. And, how do we make it better? And that's what we do. You listen to the customer, they'll tell you how to make your product better.
Most of the things we sell were ideas born from in-the-field trappers. I can tell you right now, the in-the-field trappers for Mississippi Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, USDA Wildlife Services, every state and federal agency we work with, the guys with boots on the ground, the guys and girls with boots on the ground are the best people you'll ever meet and work with because they work hard and they know how to tweak things and make them work how they need them to work. So we take those, they come to us and say, hey, this is what I made. Can you make me another one? I say, okay, you got something here. Mm-hmm. And we end up where we're sitting right now.
And Anthony Ballard, like I said, we worked with him on his bear stuff.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
He showed up the other day because he wants to, they're adding to the bear program. It's doing well. It's growing and we need it. And he went to New York to a bear conference and gave a presentation. Well, now we've got 5 states going, hey, we want the bear trap. And I'm like, why did you tell him to call? He was like, because you're the one that's going to make it. Yeah, but you design. I mean, that's pretty much his design. Yeah. And it's a good design and it works very well. He's like, yeah, but now I want you to make me some more. And when you get through, you can work with everybody else. And while we were sitting there, he said, I want to make this a bait holder that does this, this, and this. And I said, hang on just a minute. So we dug around in the closet in the back. And I pulled one out and he was like, where's that been? Well, we made it like 4 years ago.
No, it was like 6 or 7 years ago.
But we didn't have time to do it. And we were like, that's really we didn't need it. It was when CWD was starting out trying to, make sure that the corn didn't stay on the ground. And so, like I said, we kind of worked on it a little bit. Well, the CWD stuff kind of relaxed a little. So we kind of put it aside and said, we'll get back to it. And he was like, well, how much does that cost? Take it. He's like, where's another one? That's the only one that exists. It's a prototype that we never did anything with. He was
tell
like,
us what you like. Tell us what you don't like.
I was like, if you take it and use it and there's a tweak to it, that's the one thing. We built it. We know it'll work, but we didn't run it in the field for 6 months, 8 months to say, okay, what needs to be changed? I said, so it's yours.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. Okay. So, and that's a little bit of, for us listening, a little bit of insight into kind of the agency side. There's Anthony Ballard with the bear program here at NBWFP. You mentioned the conference in New York. Does this ever happen? And if so, how does this go? Like, let's say private landowner, let's say it's someone who they have money, they bought a big piece of property. And did they ever just call you and say, hey, I heard about you. I'm in, I don't know, Itawamba County, Lee County, and I've got an issue and I need traps or I need cameras. And do you ever get those kinds of calls just from an individual?
Every day.
And then how does that go then? How do you begin to work with them?
So if I get in touch with them, I hand it to TJ.
Yeah.
Like I said, if they get a hold of me, and that's kind of, that's our sales guy. He's in charge of that, and it works better. So, like I said, I get the phone calls all the time. He does too. We get it.
So I handle the lion's share of like the day to day. So, we all partner up. We, as in, the people within our company, we all partner up to handle agency relations because there's so many moving parts and pieces.
Yeah.
But as far as like day to day customers, I handle a lot of that. And typically that phone call goes, okay, what are you dealing with? Of course, they're dealing with a pig problem.
Yeah.
How much property do you have? How long have you been trapping? What trapping methods have you been using up to this point? Because that dictates what we're going to go into next.
Right.
So what also sets us apart is most trap companies sell one type of trap. We can sell you whichever type of trap you need because we work with so many different trap companies as well as make traps ourselves. So no matter what you need, we can come into it from an unbiased perspective and say, okay, you're starting fresh, your big population's never been trapped. You can go with this method, which may be easier for you to use, or you've got, pigs that have been highly harassed and educated for years and years. So you may need to go with this type of trap system. So, the two most popular traps in the world for pigs are, as far as the world of smart traps goes, is panel traps and suspended traps. So you've got those panel traps, more classic corral style traps. You can put a bunch of pigs in them, but if you've got a real educated population of pigs, they may not be your best bet because you essentially have to convince them to walk in and out of gates. Mm-hmm. So even if you have 2, 3, 4 gates, there's still an obstacle there that prevents them from getting in from all angles. Mm. Whereas suspended traps, hey, that whole trap is raised up in the air. They're pretty popular. Most people who have looked into pigs have seen these traps.
Right. Yes.
You've got the big boar buster that twists when it falls, and then the most popular suspended trap in the country is the big pig drop trap, which is it's 13 feet wide, it's a straight drop, and it is deadly on pigs. Especially when you're talking about really educated populations of pigs.
Yeah.
I can set one up by myself in less than 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. You can get in, you can get out, and typically within the first 36 hours, you've caught those pigs that you've had on bait.
And with the HogEye camera, we can remotely just watch, okay, it's time, boom.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, the camera it is tethered to the trap, but it can of course be used independent of the trap.
Yeah.
So, with a private landowner that owns a trap and a camera system, we highly, highly advocate to pre-bait. Hey, you want to have those pigs on bait for 3 to 5 days, the longer the better, before you introduce the trap.
Okay.
Because basically, I'm going to try not to get too much into the weeds here.
That's all right.
You're trying to build a dependence on that bait site. And once those pigs use that bait site 3, 4, 5 nights in a row, in their mind, they now recognize it as a food source that they're semi-dependent upon. So they're going to keep coming back as long as they don't run out of food. So you're using a camera system to say, hey, I've got 12 pigs coming into this bait site. You get them dependent on the food source. Day number 5, you go put your trap system up. And if you're using a suspended trap, the vast majority of the time, within the first night or 2, you're going to catch those pigs.
Okay. And you say that 13-foot trap, you could set it up yourself?
By myself in less than 20 minutes.
In less than 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So you just slip in, slip out?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
watch?
Yeah, I mean, most of, the big pig drop trap and the big pig panel trap were specifically designed for one person setup in mind, especially the panel trap. USDA Wildlife Services and certain state agencies came to Jack whenever I was still in college and said, hey, all our trappers, most of them work by themselves. Mm-hmm. And of course, those agencies have the spectrum of trappers. Not every trapper is 6.5 foot tall and 300 pounds and can sling a 200-pound gate around.
Yeah.
So it's, hey, they needed a trap that no one piece could weigh more than about 75 or 80 pounds.
Okay.
So what does that look like? That looks like redesigning panels that can be moved easier. That's
different material.
Yeah, different material, but still strong enough to hold pigs. That's designing a gate system that you can pull 4 pins and the gate breaks apart into 2 pieces so you can move it around easier.
Yeah.
So, that's just another example of somebody that came to Wildlife Dominion with something they had to have.
Yeah.
And, it just took off and ran with it.
That's really cool.
And most of the time when there's a need, we always look at it and say, somebody comes to us, all right, if it come to me, then I go to T.J., we sit down, okay, I'm hearing this. What have you heard? Well, I've heard it. Okay, how many times? I've got 5 people looking for this, and I've got 2 or 3 people. All right, so there is a true need. Now, sometimes it's a one-off, and okay, we just start making notes of that. But that's, that was our goal with Wildlife Dominion. Like he said earlier, most trap companies, they sell one trap. And if you're a dealer for that trap or you promote it, you promote that one trap, and that's the only thing you can use. We're exactly the opposite. We sell everything. We know the good. That's the other thing. We know the good, bad, and ugly because we've used it all. So, hey, like you said, you need a panel trap or you need a suspended trap or, you need some other style trap. And it's, a lot of times people are going, well, why would you sell me this when I called looking? Because this is going to fit you better and doesn't matter. We want you to be a customer, and our customer retention is really, really high because, we're honest. You want to buy this, that's fine. Here's the limitation of what you're looking at. For you, a panel trap may be a better option. A drop trap may be a better option. Or, if you're looking at, a farmer that's trying to plant a crop, hey, we don't have time to catch them. Go get some guys with dogs and run them out. Get the crop planted. And then let's turn around and catch them next month. Yeah. Gives us time to get going. Because the trapping is, like you said, he's already alluded to it several times. It's a process. You got to get them on bait, 3 to 5 days, set a trap up. Depends on what trap it is. You may catch them that night. If it's a panel trap and you didn't know your pigs were educated, you throw the panel trap up after they're dependent on bait. They may leave you for a week. And, but you still got to stay with it. And so that's just kind of, that's what you got to talk to your customer. And it's the customer's call. We always, kind of joke about it. You're going to get this guy that's going to call you 5 times over 2 or 3 months to talk about his big problem.
Or 2 or 3 years.
Or 2 or 3 years. Hey, I need to do this. I'm going to do this, whatever. And then there's going to be a day he's going to call you and say, I want it, but I want it today.
Mm-hmm. I'm coming this afternoon.
Yeah. It's either rooted up his wife's flower garden or the yard or something like that. And so, you always look at, okay, how long does it take us from the time we start with a guy until he's trapping and working on his problem? And then there's the guys that we've never heard from. They've never been to our website or anything like that. They pick up the phone and they say, I'll buy it right now, but I want it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they don't care what it costs. It's just, And so that's what you try to figure out is, okay, what's that trigger? And for everybody, it's different. Some people, I'm going to shoot them. We hear that all the time. So by the time they buy the gun, fit it out, they get their suppressor, they put a $6,000 thermal on it. Man, we could have sold you a trap for half that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm going to shoot them and have fun. And they're going to do that for 2 or 3 months. And then they're like, and I miss my sleep.
It's surprising. I would say that 70 to 80+% of private landowners that have a pig problem, it almost follows a script. Okay. If they have a piece of property that doesn't have pigs and the pigs show up, they start out happy. Everybody's excited. Not everybody. Most people are excited when the pigs show up on a place they've never seen them before because, hey, we got something else to shoot.
Something to shoot at, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's another opportunity during deer season. And then that lasts for a short period of time until all their mature bucks disappear whenever that pig shows up at the feeder and the food plot. And then it's, oh, gosh, we got a serious problem.
Yeah.
And then they put the APB out. Hey, every pig you see on the deer stand, shoot it.
Yeah.
And then when they realize that that's not working, they go down the route of night shooting, trapping them with very rudimentary, box traps you can buy at the co-op. They'll get people with dogs to come in and run them with dogs. And then that lasts for a year or two. And then they realize, oh gosh, this isn't working either.
Yeah.
And then
the phone call.
And then
we get the phone call. And then we're working with a very educated, hard to deal with population of pigs.
Yeah.
Because they've tried everything.
Yeah. And those pigs have seen everything.
I see.
Yeah.
So fair to say then, sort of the blanket advice would be, look, if you've got property, they show up, handle it.
Absolutely.
Now.
Handle it.
I'll give you a perfect example. I've got a good friend of mine who I went through college with. He's a land manager on a very large piece of property in the South. He knew that pigs existed on neighboring properties. And he knew me because we're both in the wildlife field, so we keep in touch. And I told him, I every time I talked to him, I told him, I said, when those pigs show up, you need to call me immediately.
Okay.
And he called me the first day he saw a pig on that piece of property. I had a trap to him the next day. He caught that group of pigs within 2 weeks. Every couple of years since then, a new group of pigs shows up and he deals with them immediately. And he has kept pigs off of that 10,000 acres.
How about that?
Because he catches the pigs as soon as they come off of the source populations and doesn't let them get established.
Yeah.
But if they show up and you let them sit for a year or two, guess what? You've got a big problem.
You got a big problem.
Yeah, you got a big problem. From
a marketing standpoint, is it word of mouth? Has it pretty much been word of mouth for you the whole way?
That's our best. And that's always the best. I mean, we do, we've got ads in Facebook and we've got, whatever website, but you take a farmer, South Mississippi, he's got a pig problem. He calls TJ or I or one of the other guys. We get him took care of. As soon as he starts catching pigs and his numbers go down, typically within a month, he's at the coffee shop or he's talking to his neighbor going, hey, I'm solving my problem with this. And so you can pretty much map it. If we sell a trap somewhere new, you're going to sell 3 to 5 traps within a 20-mile radius of him in the next 3 or 4 months. Mm-hmm. And so that's what, so like I said, that tells you that the word of mouth is working. Now, you get the one-offs that, they call from the middle of nowhere, and we're like, we didn't know there was pigs there. We knew they were in that state, but we didn't, and that guy's like, hey, I got to have it. So, yes, word of mouth is always the best, and because, like I said, we spend time talking to the customer. What is your problem? It's not, you can buy a pig trap from us or a camera system from us straight off the website. 98% of our people don't do that. They'll look at the website, and then they're going to call the next morning or shoot an email and say, hey, call me. They want to talk about it. And we understand, because a lot of people, they don't know how to trap. You look at the rental or the loaner program through Department of Ag and Commerce. Everybody thinks that's about catching pigs, and it is, but it's really about educating landowners in Mississippi what the process is. They've done a real good job of, they carry you a trap, bring you a trap, show you how to set it up and how to bait it, and then the landowner's running the trap. Mm. That's doing nothing but educating landowners on the proper way to do it. Because if you don't, you can watch YouTube all day long. There's pig trappers everywhere, and every method, and 99% of them are wrong on how to do this. And so that's part of it is, if you want to be successful, there's a process.
One of the things we say all the time is it's extremely easy to catch pigs. You can go to the co-op and you can spend $600 on a box trap. and you can put it in a food plot on your property and dump a sack of corn in it, and it's going to catch a pig at some point if you've got pigs on your property. It's very easy to catch pigs. It's very difficult to catch all the pigs.
Mm-hmm. Or to put a den in it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very difficult for when you're talking about a long-term management solution, it's very difficult. Mm. It's very difficult, but it's 100% achievable if you go about it the right way.
Okay.
We do have customers that have taken care of their pig problem. And that's not to say they'll never have a pig that shows back up.
Sure.
But whenever they do show back up, they take care of them fast, and they're able to, use their property just like they did before the pig showed up.
Yeah.
We did a project, and it's right there on the Florida-Georgia line. It's about 200,000 acres. Had a pig population. It wasn't huge, but they had a pig problem. And so, it was part of a government program. They went in and caught those pigs. And then they took those traps and just kept moving it out. And over the course of about 3 years, there's right at 500,000 acres that hasn't seen a pig in 2 years. Mm. So they were able to catch the core in the middle, and then they just kept working the fringes out, and the program's still going. And the government side of it, because it was part of a farm bill project, when it wrapped up and they were like, okay, money's out. And all the landowners, kind of formed a little co-op and said, now what does it take to keep this going? And there's a fee, and I don't remember what it is, 50 cents, $1 an acre. You put your money in, and the government still has trappers there, but they're paying the government to do the work. The equipment was already there, and they were like, we don't care what it costs. We're not having to deal with pigs now. Yeah. And when you get those collective groups together, or you get two farmers that work together and buy a trap, and they trap on both pieces of property, that's when you start seeing real gains in controlling pig populations.
Mm. It's as I hear you talk about it and tell that story, for example, it's you can back up to 10, 20,000 feet and look at it. And it's fascinating to think about everything that goes on and how important it is, socially, financially, and every other thing to deal with. Just in this example, one wildlife invasive species, a wild hog, and what that animal means and what it can do, the damage it can do. And therefore, a business like yours that has, come up and just to deal with it. It's really fascinating to take a look at it.
And it's, you take a state like Mississippi, we're a rural state. And so most of what we do is geared towards controlling crop loss, whether that's, replanting of hardwoods or whether that's, corn, soybeans, rice, whatever. That's what most of the problem we deal with in Mississippi is. Now, you do get some like reservoirs, rooting on dams and stuff like that. But then you get around these big cities, we have HOAs in large, say in Georgia or in Texas or other states, Oklahoma. The HOAs are putting together and, hey, they're buying a trap. They're hiring a trapper, and a lot of times that, TJ or I will go meet with them and say, this is the process. This is what it's going to take. We'll work with that guy if he's never trapped before, or, this is what you need to do. He's steady calling us for a week or two or maybe a month. And after that, you never hear from him. And you call him a year later and he's like, man, we're catching 300, 400, 600 pigs a year. Mm. He's just, but in those situations, if you look at a pig tearing up an acre of corn, all right, that's $500, $600. You tear up an acre of a golf course, that's $50,000, $60,000. So, I mean, that's a big difference. Or, somebody put $100,000 in landscaping a, whatever, 6,000 square foot house. They don't want to see a pig run through it.
Right. Dig up all the bulbs and everything else.
And it happens.
It happens.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. How do they find you? Where does someone listening find you online? So,
there's, of course, Wildlife Dominion is the parent company, but bigpigtrap.com, that's our website.
Bigpigtrap.com.
Yep. You can go to there. It's got a message board on it, chat feature. If it's during hours when one of us is monitoring it, like I said, we'll be happy to talk with you. If not, it'll get your information. We'll call you back the next day. Or that, if you've got a trap and you just need a camera system, then you can go to HogEyeCameras.com and same thing. You're getting the same people. Like I said, when you go to those two websites, we all work, it's all together as far as, because it's a solution. A camera's not any good without a trap, and a trap's not very good without a camera. So
if you go to either one of those websites and scroll all the way to the bottom and call that phone number, it rings that line in Crawford, Mississippi.
Crawford, Mississippi. Okay. Great. Guys, really do appreciate you giving me some time. Jack, TJ, great to meet y'all. Thanks for coming.
Glad to be a part of it.
Glad to be here.
I enjoyed that. Hope y'all did too. Thanks for listening. We'll see you outdoors.